Hey there, I'm Adrienne. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to be talking about editing slightly more advanced stuff in Premiere Pro. This is part 2 of a series of learning about Premiere Pro for beginners. The first one I'll link below in the description box. You'll also find in the description box a free PDF of guidelines for how to set up your own recording space if that's something that you're thinking about doing. Let's get started by asking ourselves the question, how do I edit a sequence where I have A-roll and B-roll? What is A-roll? This is A-roll. This is me on camera talking to you, describing concepts. B-roll is other footage that helps to visualize what it is I'm talking about. They always say it's better to show, not just tell. Let's get started by going to the bottom left down to your project panel. There are several different ways to view your files. You can see those options here. Personally, I like the list view because the other views simply get too visually cluttered for me. I'm going to double click and have that clip show up here in the source monitor, and then I will set an in and an out point in order to take just a portion of just the video. I will drag that down to the timeline over where I am talking about something that this clip is referencing. This is footage from a previous video that I've done about optimal settings for recording video on your cell phone. So I'm talking about particular settings, my A-roll, and then my B-roll is this footage where I'm showing you those different settings in your phone. All right, let's move on to effects. There are very simple adjustments that you can make to your clips right here in Premiere Pro in the default editing workspace. We double click on a clip in the timeline in order to open it up in the source monitor. Now we go over here to the Effect Controls panel, which is right by the source monitor window. You'll see some basic effects for manipulating the image, like position, scale, and opacity. But what if you want to add an effect that isn't available in the Effect Control panel? Maybe something like a blur. Just head down to the Project panel and click on the Effects tab. Now you can find an effect one of two ways. Either toggle open the effects to find something that fits your needs, or you can search for exactly what you're looking for in the search bar. So I am going to search for the Gaussian blur. Drag and drop the blur onto the clip on the timeline, and then you'll see the Gaussian blur effect up here in the Effect Controls panel. Now if you want to add blur, you just need to increase the number. Something else that you can do in Premiere Pro is pretty basic animation using something called keyframes. Keyframes are something that we add, and they're basically like a checkpoint that we use to direct Premiere to do something, starting at checkpoint or keyframe A, and then going along and stopping at checkpoint or keyframe B. Let's say we want to animate the Gaussian blur that we just added. Let's go back to the Effect Controls panel and click on this little stopwatch in front of the word blurriness. You can see over here that this created a keyframe. This means that at this moment in time on the timeline, the blurriness is set to 0. Now we jump ahead a few frames, change the value of the blurriness, and you can see that another keyframe was created at that point in time on the timeline. Now let's watch and see what we just animated. If you ever decide that you don't want a particular effect anymore, you can simply click on it and then hit delete. You can also add literally as many effects as you want to a single clip. So there's one effect that I like to use sometimes that you cannot find in the Effects tab, and that is speed. Either speeding up your clip or slowing down your clip. You need to go to the timeline and right-click on the clip. Scroll down and select speed, or you can hit Control or Command R. This box pops up. Anything above 100 will speed up the clip. and anything below 100 will slow down the clip. Maybe you're thinking you'd like to add a transition in between clips. I know I really like to use the push transition in my YouTube videos. These are also in the effects panel. You search for them the same way you search for a video effect. I'm going to search for push and pull it onto the clip on the timeline. Something you need to pay attention to is you need to add transition to the spot where two clips meet. Now let's add some text. Head over to the toolbar and either click the type tool or hit T on your keyboard. I go over to the program monitor, draw the text box, and start typing. It's pretty easy. Now, if you want to make any changes to your text, you double click on the text layer on the timeline, which opens it up in the source monitor. Go over here to the right to Effect Controls, and you'll see text. Toggle it open, and you can make any changes you need. Next up is color correction. Now, you can go deep into color correction or color grading, but we are just going to stick with the basics right now. We're going to do a little bit of white balance and play with the saturation a little bit. Go up here to the top right, click on the little box with the blue dot in the top right corner and click color. This opens up the Lumetri color panel. Now you're going to want to open basic correction. First, I'm going to show you how to do it manually. I always use the eyedropper tool right here next to white balance. I click on that eyedropper tool and I go over to the program monitor and I click on something that is true white. I almost never mess around with temperature and tint. Changing those values manually is going to get you very far away from what you want very quickly. Next, I go down to creative and I change the values for saturation and vibrance a little bit. So you have two choices. You can either go through those steps manually, or you can go over here to this auto button. This is a new button in Premiere Pro and it should get you pretty close. Now, if you click it and you don't like what it generates, you can easily go through these manual steps of white balance, saturation, and vibrance. Last but not least, I'm going to give you a few tips for how to edit music in Premiere Pro. Music is critical. It's going to be one of the main ways that you set the tone or the mood for your video. All right, all the same rules apply. Go over to your project panel, double click on the music clip. It will open up in the source monitor. You can either drag the entire clip onto your timeline, or you can set in and out points, I and O, and lay just that portion on your timeline. I expect that you will want to reduce the volume of your music. I literally always do. Double click on the music clip on the timeline, go up next to the source monitor and click on Effect Controls, toggle open volume, and you'll see the level right here. And there you have it. Just a few basic tips and tricks for Premiere Pro that will help you give your videos a little bit more personality and individuality. Leave a comment below with any tips or tricks or shortcuts that you have to share with other Premiere Pro beginners. And I'll see you in the next one.